you're not using iPhone with 3 cameras, please flush yourself down the toilet.
Did you get that one? Of course, my phone is amazing.
It's a story that started with envy and ended with a lesson carved into the very soul of our city, Port Harcourt. Everyone here knows it now. It's the kind of tale mothers tell their daughters in hushed, fearful tones. But I was there. I saw it all from the beginning. It was the first day at the new government college in Job, and the air was thick with hope and cheap fuel smoke. My father, who owns one of the biggest nightclubs in Port Harcourt, the Grotto, had driven me himself in his sensible Toyota Camry. Focus on your book, Jenny, he said. We have money, but money is a foolish master. Education is a faithful friend. I nodded, clutching my Samsung Galaxy. It was a good phone, powerful, did everything I needed. It was a tool, not a trophy. And then I saw these girls. They moved through the crowded courtyard like two glittering sharks in a sea, sparkles and diamonds. Even their names were a performance. We'd all gone to the same secondary school, but university was their grand stage. They were childhood friends, both stunningly beautiful, with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that held a calculated gleam. And in their hands, gleaming under the harsh Port Harcourt sun, were the newly released iPhone 16 Pro Maxes. They weren't just holding them, they were brandishing them as if they were extensions of their very arms. A crowd of admirers and gawkers surrounded them. Their parents were average, just like most of us. A civil servant and a teacher, I heard. But you would never know it. They were draped in folklore, head-turning outfits that were almost but not quite the real thing. They were birds of the same feathers. Their entire existence was a campaign to make everyone else feel small. Their slogan, which they'll cackle while taking selfies, was, "If you're not using iPhone with 3 cameras, please flush yourself down the toilet." Cruel, meaningless, and yet it worked. It created a hierarchy, and they were firmly at the top. Then there was Benita, sweet, impressionable Benita from my chemistry class. She had an iPhone 8, a phone she was clearly proud of. Its case kept spotlessly clean. She approached them one day, her voice full of admiration. "Your phones are so beautiful," she breathed. Sparkles took the phone from Benita's hand between 2 fingers, as if it were a solid tissue. "These?" she sneered, her nose wrinkling. "My grandmother uses this to play Candy Crush." "Does it even take good pictures? Or does it add vintage filters automatically?" Diamond laughed. She took back her phone, tears welling in her eyes, and she left. I found her later, crying behind the library. I tried to console her. "They are fools, Benita. Their value is in a device. Yours is in here." I tapped my head, but the words felt hollow against the glittering allure of sparkles and diamonds' world. Remorse swirled about them. They barely attended lectures. They were always shopping at Spa, bags from boutiques we couldn't afford dangling from their wrists. They would call their parents and I'd overhear them saying so many lies. My stomach twisting. "Yes, mommy, I'm in the library." "Just so much sting." "Yes, the money for the textbooks will help." Then they'll burst into laughter, planning which club to hit that night. I knew which clubs because my father owned one. One Friday, I went with him to the Grotto to help him with some inventory. The club was a different world at night, a pulsating beat of music, money and darkness, and there, in a roped-up VIP section, were sparkles and diamonds. They were with a man old enough to be their grandfather, a wealthy chief whose fingers were heavy with gold rings. On the table in front of them was a stack of naira notes. My blood ran cold. It was one thing to suspect, and another thing to see. Without thinking, I pulled out my Samsung and zooming in, took a clear video. The way they hung on him, the way he slid a wad of cash into Diamond's purse, it was transactional. It was ugly. The next day in class, the whispers were louder than ever. I showed the video to a few close friends. Some were shocked. Others were not. We knew, one said bitterly. They've been bribing lecturers with gifts and money. How do you think they get A's without even opening a book? But Benita, when I showed her, her eyes didn't fill with disgust. They filled with a terrifying longing. They must be so brave, she whispered. I knew then I had lost her. A week later, Benita was one of them. She started skipping classes. Her shyness was replaced by a hard, glittering confidence. She got a new weave, new clothes, and she was suddenly never without sparkles and diamond. They had presented her to their boss, a formidable woman everyone called Madame Gold or Mama di Mama. Benita, with her fresh-faced beauty, became an instant favorite with the clients. They had pulled her into the deep end, and she had swung towards them with a smile. The new semester arrived, and the trio made a grand entrance. They had graduated to the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Their hair was new. Their clothes screamed luxury. Their perfume was a cloud of expensive French air that preceded them everywhere. They were untouchable. They bought gifts for everyone, junk food, drinks, small tokens, and for a while, the ridicule turned into fun in praise. They were the generous iPhone girlies, the campus celebrities. Then came the night that changed everything. Madame Gold called them for a special client, a billionaire Alhaji from the north, in town for a night. He wanted 3 beautiful flowers, she said. The money was unprecedented, $5,000 each. It was a fortune. They met him at the Hilton. He was a serious, quiet Hausa man in an impeccable white Baban Riga. He didn't drink, he didn't talk much. He just looked at them with an unwavering, calculating stillness. But the money was real, and that was all that mattered. They had what he called a mad fun. He left before dawn, saying he had a flight to catch. He left the money on the dresser, crisp, green, and powerful. For a week, they were on top of the world. They spent the money with a reckless, glorious abandon. They bought more gifts, more clothes, more nothing. They were invincible. Then, the weakness started. It was Sparkles who complained first. I feel so tired. Like I no fit get up. Then Diamond started losing weight at an alarming rate, but the worst part was the smell. It started softly, a faint, sweaty, rotting odor that their cloud pink perfume could not mask. Then it grew stronger. It was a smell of decay, something dying from the inside out. People in class began to notice. They would walk into a room, a path would clear as people recoiled. Their feet began to rot. The campus that once worshipped them now recoiled in horror and pity. The iPhone girlies, the sparkles, the diamonds, it was all gone. All that was left were 2 sick, terrified girls with a smell that announced their shame to the world. They stopped coming to class. They sold everything, the wigs, the clothes, the bags. Finally, they sold the sacred iPhone 17s. They visited doctors and fake healers who promised cures but only took their money. Benita hit a wall of terror. She saw the abyss and finally turned back. She called her parents, sobbing, and confessed everything. They were heartbroken, but they were her parents. They came and took her home. They took her to their church, a small fervent congregation that prayed for her that day and night. Miraculously, slowly, weekly, monthly, she began to heal. The smell faded. Her weight returned. She was given a second chance. She called Sparkles and Diamond. Come, She begged them, "My parents' church, they can help you. I'm getting better." They were so desperate, they had no choice than to come. The congregation prayed for them, as usual, and for a moment I believe something lifted. The lightness returned to their eyes, but it was a fragile thing. The shame was heavier shame than the disease. They couldn't face our classmates. They couldn't face Port Harcourt. "We'll go to Lagos," Diamond declared. The old glint defiance in her eyes. "We'll start over. We'll get better there and come back stronger." A full force. Benita pleaded with them. "Lagos will eat you alive. Stay here. Heal properly. This is a sign from God." They didn't listen. The lure of the fast life, the belief that they could outturn consequences, was so strong. They took the little money they had left and fled to Lagos. We all know what Lagos can be. A city of dreams for some, a meat grinder for others. They were back to what they knew, seeking out the underworld of quick money. But they were damaged goods now. The smell was mostly gone, but they were marked. The wrong people saw them not as beautiful girls, but as ingredients, desperate, disposable souls. What happened to them in Lagos? They were promised a huge sum of money by a ritualist gang. They went willingly, thinking their luck had finally turned. They were never seen whole again. Months later, two mad women were seen trekking barefoot and ragged along East-West Road from Lagos towards Port Harcourt. Their feet were bare, bloody and deformed. Their minds were utterly gone, lost to whatever horrors they had endured. They spoke in gibberish. But sometimes, amidst the nonsense, a clear phrase would emerge. "Flash it. Latest iPhone. Please, flush." People from Port Harcourt driving that route recognized them. The news spread like wildfire. Sparkles and Diamond had returned home. Benita heard the news and wept. She is now healed, body and soul. She's back in school, a different person, quiet, humble, dedicated to her studies. She served God with a fervent born of someone who has seen the pit and has been pulled back from its edge. The rest of us, we learned the lesson.